Sounds good.
All right. Welcome to Radical Books and Activists. We have the supreme pleasure of having Lew Rosenbaum with us today. We're also going to podcast this episode on my new podcast, which I recently revived on BuzzFeed, called Fighting Forward for a Future. So this is one of my favorite topics. We've had one episode, and I hope to continue to have this, which has to do with automation in the economy. So Lew is a longtime activist. He's a member of the League of Revolutionaries for New America chapter in Chicago. And we're also joined here with our amazing co-hosts, Misael Juarez and Kitty de la Sombra. And so y'all want to introduce yourselves right quick, and then I'll have Lew say a little bit about himself. Why don't
My
you go?
name is
Go ahead, Misael.
my name is Misael Juarez. I am a poet. I'm an advocate for mental health, and I am a I don't know. I was a homie growing up. I went to the school, university, learned a few things, learned about revolutionary consciousness,
That's right. That's right.
and I've been hooked on ever since. Thank you for having me.
Misael, thank you for being amazing. Kitty, how you doing, lady? Let's hear about you.
Uh, I'm good. Hi, I'm Kitty de la Sombra. I am a former university instructor, still educator scholar for life, also poet, artist, and I am a new dad, so my life is occasionally kind of crazy. Like after this, I'm dashing off to do 6 months pictures with my daughter.
Oh, so cool. Your hair looks amazing.
Thank
Well,
you.
congrats again on fatherhood. We'll have to do something special for you for Father's Day. Lew, why don't you just say a few words about yourself? We only have 30 minutes today, viewers, because I have to go to a graduation that I totally forgot about. So congratulations to Jared. And oh my God, Jared. Oh shit, I'm forgetting the middle. Ethan. Oh my God, Jared and Ethan Couture that are graduated with graduate degrees from very prestigious universities. So congrats. All right, go ahead, Lew.
Yeah, well, just briefly, I've been in the revolutionary movement for about 50 years. I was in medical school for a couple of years, and at that time, what I found was that medical care was not for ordinary people.
Yep.
It was even it's even worse today, but at that point, it was very clear that medical care was for the wealthy, and it was. I didn't want to get into that rat race, as it were. I quit, and most of my life and work has been as a bookseller. But if I were to describe what I am, it would be as a revolutionary. I do other things. I'm a poet, a writer, educator, and so forth. But fundamentally, I'm a revolutionary. And
Yeah,
that's the
for
way I
sure.
describe
That's
myself.
great. Yeah, we've actually had the pleasure of having other fantastic revolutionaries that are trying to educate people towards that revolutionary process. And today we maybe or may not have time, but some other time we're going to have Lew back on so we can dialogue in poetry, which is something we really enjoy. So, Lew, one of the things that we're talking about, and this is, I think people are more open to the idea, they see automation happening, they see the impact
Mhm.
it's having on the workplace. But how, maybe even in the last 10 years, how do you see the concept of automation or automation in the workplace? What do you see? What is the process that you see in terms of that?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is that the automation we're seeing today is fundamentally different from any other automation we've ever seen. This is new. It's never happened before. It's not that automation hasn't happened before. We've always had automation from the first days that people first picked up a plow. That was automation. But today it's fundamentally different. The automation that began at the beginning of capitalism was something that expanded people's ability to work and created the conditions for more people to be employed. That happened with large factories, large farms, all that kind of thing. I'm not saying anything here, of course, about the way in which automation at that point uh, impacted the environment. I don't really want to talk about that much because that's a different and really huge subject, um, and something that we can't ignore. But we're going to have to for a 30-minute program. Uh, but what makes it different now than at the dawn of capitalism is that the kind of automation that's taking place today is doing away with entire divisions of labor. It's doing away with not just large numbers of jobs and not just more jobs, but fundamentally undermining the very basis of capitalism itself, and that is the buying and selling of labor and labor power. The commodity that we've called labor power is becoming more and more valueless or less valuable. And that's led to everything, all the changes that we see in terms of the shredding of the safety net. Uh, there's one way to describe this, and that is, for example, to think of the million people that have died of COVID in this country in the last year. 80% of them have been above 60 years old. That means what happened in this country is that the ruling class in this country essentially got rid of large numbers of people who are no longer in the workforce.
Yep, that's
They're
right.
unnecessary for the production of commodities.
And
And
that's something I think that's very on point, because had it been more affluent people, white people, I think it would have been a very different situation here, right? The same is true for black and brown people, especially in Chicago, that during the pandemic, they didn't get vaccines, they didn't get contact tracing, they didn't get tests. And it's still happening now. I mean, the infection rates in Chicago right now are at 6%, which is higher than it was at the peak of the pandemic when it started. So what's happening? What's going on? They're privatizing the industry. So CVS and Walgreens doles out, vaccines, but these are not public healthcare institutions. These are private companies that are making money, that are wasting vaccines, that don't have the capacity, the staffing to help people. And if you look at the disparity of where these places are, there's very few on the south and west side. And even now, they're closing key pharmacies. In fact, on Monday,
right,
going to take a letter to JB Pritzker saying, you have the power to not shut down these vaccines. Please don't do this. It's murder. This is murder. We got to call it what it is. And I think Lew is on point. And one of the things that, I don't know, Misael and Kitty, if you both have I know y'all talk, I talk a lot, but if you want to ask Lew a question or make a comment about what he's talking about, please jump right in.
So for people who didn't have like insurance, aren't covered by Medicaid or some kind of state insurance, you had to get the free testing. You would have to enter either your driver's license or ID number or your social security number. If you do not have one of those, there was no way to sign up for free testing. And I think that's deplorable, because who needs it most? It's the people who are barely getting by, people who might be undocumented. That doesn't mean that you don't deserve testing. Like, people can say whatever, opinions that doesn't have any, like, that doesn't have bearing on life or death. Like, I'm not saying that, like, that doesn't count either. But when it comes down to, like, is someone going to be able to get 7 days down the road on the other side of COVID or not? Like, it doesn't matter if you have an effing ID. But it did matter, like, because otherwise you had to come up with cash to get a test.
Right. Or a right to get to be tested, but I think the hypocrisy, of course, is that technology can help with all this, right? There's no reason they couldn't have taken these vaccine bans to the people. There's no reason God, don't get me started. But, you raised a really interesting point about value, not just in terms of how workers are being devalued, but value itself. And I was asking a former guest, and I know that show, you weren't very happy with that show, but he was asking us how we define value. And here's the problem. If a person makes his phone, right, it is costing very different than if it's automated and made by machines. Then how much is a phone worth, right? And of course, in the capitalist system, I mean, it's like I think it's a Russian game of roulette. That's how I see it a lot of times. Even when things cost very little to produce, they still charge more for cars, for shoes, you name it. So it becomes a problem, right? But I think that's also fundamental for people to understand that yes, the value of this changes very much when a robot makes it, right? But it also means that the capitalists are going to make more money because they don't have to pay for benefits, they don't have to pay health care, they don't have to pay maternity leave, they don't have to worry about the workers getting sick. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, because you mentioned that capitalism is practically eating itself. And I think people need to understand that because they're living it, they're experiencing it. And the COVID example is prime. But to understand as a class what that means for them is really important.
I think people see it most immediately in inflation. What they see is what we all see is we go to the gas station, for example, and we get some gas. Now, I think everybody. I don't know whether anybody on this in this call here has ever experienced a situation where somebody actually came out to the gas pump and pumped gas for you. Anybody here ever have that happen?
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, I haven't had that happen to me for I think about 30 years, maybe more. Um, it used to be that was the norm. Well, that's all changed. That's an example of automation. Nevertheless, the gas prices keep going up, and we blame it, or the government, the ruling class blames it on various immediate things, but really the prices of things no longer reflect anything like value. They used to at one time, but the more and more the more and more the government throws money into the system without creating value, the more and more the prices go up. Not to say that they can't distribute goods without cost to people, but the way in which they manipulate the market makes money the the king. So when you look at that phone, Apple will charge you, I don't know what they're charging now, $800 or some bullshit like that.
Thousands of dollars for that phone. Thousands.
But the very fact that I think it was T-Mobile that was giving them away shows you how little they really cost. Whenever you go into a grocery store and you see something that says buy one get one free, what does that mean? How do they do that? What's the magic that makes one free and not the other?
Or excesses in outlet stores. I often, you know what? I don't even buy new stuff anymore. I go straight to the clearance rack. We were going to go to an outlet store today, but you see the same thing for like $10, and then if you go to the main store, it costs you like $160. What is up with that?
Right. That's really what we're talking about in terms of this fetishism that that we're looking at when we look at money as something that really makes a difference today. It really isn't it doesn't really address the question of value as it used to at one time. At one time, it really did have some relationship to actually the amount of labor that was in something. So you can't look at your phone and say, yeah, that's $800 or $1,000 or $2,000 worth of labor. It doesn't make sense anymore, and people understand that.
Right.
There's something awry, totally awry.
Right. And I think even when, because people are like, well, technology can work alongside the workers. Even when that happens, there's a level of speed up in terms of work and exploitation. And the prime example is Starbucks. So now you have the people that come to the counter, human beings coming and ordering coffee, and then you have the app that puts in orders. But they haven't really changed the number of employees working behind the counter. And I often used to go to the Starbucks in Hyde Park, which the workers do a fantastic job. But they're running around filling orders here, and these customers are getting pissed off because they're supposed to get their coffee instant, and these people are waiting in line. And and I wonder, damn, I think the robot should come to the Starbucks to help out a little bit, but then I don't want the human beings to lose their jobs. So my point is that even when you have the technology to make things easier on workers, they don't do it. And so I think it's a very complex issue that we're living in. But and by the way, I did get this phone for free with my T-Mobile plan, totally free. Did not pay a penny, you know. And yeah, there were students of mine that were pobrecitos paying, I mean, a ton of money for the same product, you know. And I
Right.
think you've explained that beautifully, because I have to grapple with value, and you know, and a lot of times I even grapple with the necessity to work, and it's not that I'm lazy. I don't think any of us here are lazy. Even people who are unemployed, we're still doing work. But why do we still have to work for a ruling class that, you know, provides shit
Right.
conditions, poor pay, no health benefits, you know? Yeah, right? Kitty, you agree with that?
Absolutely. Like, especially I'm thinking you probably higher ed, like you're thinking of, if you don't have tenure in the university system, you end up a lot of times teaching at multiple schools for no health insurance and for really not good pay. I know at one point I was comparing pay with someone that I know who worked at a high school in Illinois, and he made a ridiculous amount more than me, and he still did not make good money at that time. Like, it still was not enough that, I mean, his wife worked full time as a librarian, and they were barely able to get a house.
Yeah,
And
I believe it. And you know, but that's also the problem with automation is that it, it I'm sure at the university where I work, or pardon me, the community college, I'm sure they will love to automate as much as they can, because they've already started to with registration, right? They're thinking of ways of providing more online classes. Why? So adjuncts can teach those classes. And the city colleges of Chicago is also one of the lowest paying institutions for adjuncts. They're paying like $2,000 for a course, which is poverty, way below poverty wage. So one of the things that we're trying to do is somebody who's on the negotiation team for the faculty is to make it so that instead of having a 40% 60 ratio, 60% being adjuncts, 40% being faculty, we go to 80% faculty, 20% adjuncts, and have language to say, okay, these adjuncts that have been working here, make them full-time faculty. Why not? Now, of course, you know, the administration is going to cheap out and be like, oh, no, we're broke, enrollment is down. I don't give a shit. People deserve to be paid the work they put into it. You know,
yeah,
you pay based on, God, I'm just, this is something that I'm really angry about. But they did automate registration, which did a huge disservice to students who are first generation college students, don't know how to pick their courses, whereas before they would talk to a faculty or a professional who would guide them through the programs, right? And
yeah.
yes, there were long hours. Yes, it was sometimes tedious work, but you were helping a person along the path. But that, I think, also is because the ruling class does not need an educated workforce, which is a problem. And we're seeing that now with these budget cuts in Chicago public schools. The poorest black and brown communities being cut, while schools in the north side, where they're more affluent, are getting $1 million extra funds. This is bullshit. And I think that's also, I mean, Lou, what do you think? Do you think part of the reason, too, that we're seeing a deterioration, not just in the social net, you know, healthcare and public schools, is because the ruling class no longer needs an educated workforce? What do you think about that?
Well, I agree with you. I think they no longer need a workforce at all. I mean, there's a large part of it. Yeah, I mean, what we hear every month is that the country has added so many thousands of jobs every month, and over the last year added so many millions of jobs. Well, most of those jobs that have been added are at the lowest level of pay, and so of course, that makes it very difficult for anybody to survive, and they don't really care about replacing those workers anyway, because there's a large number of people who are out of work. It's a myth that there aren't that there are not enough workers out there for the jobs that exist. That is totally wrong. But I think the other thing to keep in mind, I think is really important, is that the production of goods and services without labor demands the distribution of those goods and services without money. And one of the questions that you might really think about, or we all might think about in the work that we do, is what when and I'm not saying you should not fight for better wages. Of course not. I'm not saying that. But in a society that was really beneficial, if you had health care that you didn't have to pay for, if you had housing that you didn't have to pay for, if you could go to the grocery store and pick up the groceries that you need without paying for it, why would you need, um, you know, a glorious salary? You wouldn't need it at all if it was available to you. But they keep us fighting for these little crumbs in order because they have a market economy which demands that the abundance that we've got can only be rationed out according to who can pay for it.
Yeah, and I think I find that disgusting because we do have an abundance of food. There are, I mean, point me to any city in this country, and there will be empty buildings, right? Plots of land. Uh, I just think that when we talk about abundance, people don't understand like how quickly things can be produced. I mean, you can print a house now, literally print a house and build it in a matter of hours. I mean, I'm like, what? That to me is something that definitely that the very same technology that is ruining or not ruining but destroying capitalism also has the potential to have this. And
Hmm.
then it wouldn't even be a utopia because even with that, there will still be problems to solve. We'll still have environmental issues. We have increase in society in diseases because of global warming. The problems are not going to stop, right? And I also think that there's this fear that people won't work if you provide these things. You know, we're here on a Sunday. We're not getting paid. We're
Right,
producing a good and we're still working. This is work. This is intellectual work, right? So
Yeah.
right,
I call bullshit on this whole notion that if you don't work for somebody, you're not going to do anything. No, we still raise our kids. We still would exist in community. I really think we have to reimagine and think outside the box and bust out of these fucking ideological concepts that have been entrenched in us, right? Culturally, socially, however, through school, through church, wherever, that this is the only way, this is the correct way. And capitalism has a solution to all these problems. Fuck you. Show me the solutions for the millions of people that are dying. Show me the solutions for Texas, where 19 people died because this fucking
right.
arms industry is making billions of dollars and have the fucking politicians in the back pockets. It just doesn't add up. So, Misael, what do you think about all this?
Um, you know what? It's very moving to see a man who's been in the revolutionary struggle for 50 years. I was admiring his gesture and continuation of the struggle. I remember back when I was a college student about 20 years ago when the older heads would tell me why I should respect a person. And I couldn't see it. I could only listen to it, right? But again, it's only I wanted to make my point that I appreciate that there's Lewis right here with us. But to get into the subject of automation and what that means for me at my age, I'm almost 40 years old. I think it's very important that we don't lose sight that technology is giving us a platform that we can utilize to create content and ideas and share ideas. However, the infiltration of ideas is a big problem in all of this stuff. I say this because we are living in a time where the poet, the artist could be hired by the system to infiltrate and downplay whatever ideas are coming up to say graciously. And I feel that way because I grew up in the streets in my teens, and I had these amazing stories. But my the reason why I bring this up is because I'm worried. Not so much. I think the idea that automation can serve humanity is something better if it's in the hands of the public sector, you know. But I'm worried that these ideas are not getting to the people. I'm worried that these ideas are not getting there because there's a block, and we got to figure out what that means. How is technology blocking ideas, and versus how we can use technology to spread ideas.
Oh,
And I
absolutely.
guess that's what I wanted to say. And maybe Lou, if you could talk about it, if you could talk about something like that.
In the next 4 minutes, Lou.
That is a really important question. And the basic question that you're raising is the difference between communism and fascism. That's, I think, what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is what are the possibilities that technology provides. Well, one is the path to a society of abundance for everybody, and the other is the path to complete subservience to a dominant ruling class that doesn't give a shit about anybody. And that's what we're, I think, fighting against. The question, I think part of what you're talking about is in terms of what we do about it is how is we can't get anywhere simply by fighting against something. We have to be able to convey the amazing possibilities that is there because automation has created a class of people that has nowhere to go except to reorganize society in the interests of all. Now, that rising social force is a product of that automation and is the hope of the future. And I think that's a parting shot, I think, that I'd be
Yeah.
happy to leave on.
And you're getting likes on Facebook. That I think is so beautifully said. And that's a reality, right? But I feel you, Misael. When Elon Musk bought Twitter, I was like, damn, here we go. But unfortunately for them, we're just gonna have to another platform. I don't care,
To
and we're,
adjust, yeah.
by any means necessary, comrades. That's a reality. We have to move to a revolutionary process to educate people. Kitty, I love you. I see you agreeing. You
Yeah,
know, yeah.
absolutely.
And I think we really need to take this message out, the message of hope, but also the dangers, right? But listen, that was a beautiful parting shot. Lou, where can people find you on your socials?
They can find me on Facebook.
Okay, Rosenbaum.
I'm there. You can certainly look for me at lrna.org on the Learna website and on the Chicago Learna Facebook page.
Which, by the way, I didn't ask you, but we're streaming there too. Anyway, so listen,
Cool.
this has been beautiful. I say we do it again. Let's do another one next week if you're all up for it. I think it would be really important to talk about other dynamics like population growth. What does that mean in terms of job creation and automation? And obviously, what is the ruling class going to do about it? Not a damn thing, but what are we willing to do about it to make this, this better world that's possible now? Now, that's the thing that to me pisses me off. This potential is here now, not tomorrow, not next week. The possibility is here now, you know. So hey, Kitty and Misa, do you want to leave with a beautiful parting shot or some reaction before we take off?
Yeah, since I feel like we have more audiences than usual, I want to say it takes it takes a great mind to amplify the message, and what makes the mind great is the creative experience in your heart. If you have heart to amp up any message, use it. Or never forget that the heart is faster than the memory, simply because people are more likely to get spooked out when at first before the mind thinks reacts and oh, it's not a danger. But I want you to know that your heart can carry a message. Um, Take it as far as you can and relay it, because that's teamwork. It's about teamwork. We have a message, relay it to your buddy next to you, to your coworker, to somebody about these ideas that are being presented. Thank you.
Beautiful, Kitty.
It's important that we talk about the problems, but it's even more important that people get together and form solutions, because a problem without a solution is just complaining.
Yeah, 100%. And to that point, we are starting to have speak outs right in front of Orozco School to unite on how we're going to fight CPS budget cuts. I'll give you more details about that. But Lou, thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you. Thank you
your
very
pleasure.
much.
We're going to close out with the amazing tunes of Adam Gottlieb of One Love, who wrote this beautiful song, Libera Radicalmente. Next week, we're going to talk to the editor and owner of Orinonco Press, who is a fantastic international press, and maybe do another episode on automation in the economy. So thank you for watching. If you like the show, please like and subscribe. Definitely download my podcast, Fighting Forward for Our Future. Thanks a lot, viewers. All right.